Hello, everybody. This is the Static Site Editor Group sync call. This is the engineering focus flavor, and today is Monday, the 13th of July. So just a quick shout out reminder that from tomorrow, Jacques will be on paternity leave. His twins are due to be born on Wednesday morning early. I've spoken today with Jacques about just kind of like, he was talking about, how does he stay kind of like involved in the team and so on. He doesn't want to come back and be all, everything's foreign. So I said, look, everything we do is recorded. He's more than welcome to jump in and join calls and partake in conversations. There will just be no expectation from our side on him to deliver anything. So I said, depending on how crazy things might be, that if he has some downtime and he's bored, he's more than welcome to pop in on a call, chat with us in Slack. I encourage him to post some cute baby photos in our social channel. But essentially, there's no expectation on him for any output for the next while. And whatever involvement he has is at his discretion, as and when he's able to do so. So good luck, Jacques, and we're holding funds for a safe delivery. All right, on to the engineering stuff. So I wanted to start off with just kind of like looking ahead at 13.3. So in essence, 13.3, our focus is a continuation of 13.2. We're going to carry on with the handbook integration. There's some issues that we've brought forward from 13.3 that we plan to work on, specifically the formatting change as you use the editor, which has pushed some other issues out, and that's okay, because in the broad scope of things, we will be making sure that we focus on continuing with the integration. The goal at the end of 13.3 is to open up the static site editor to all of GitLab to say, hey, this tool is now available to edit your handbook pages. Feel free to use it. It's not to make it the default or only editor, but it is to open it up and to say, we believe that all pages in the handbook is now editable by the editor. Go ahead, use it, dog food the product, and give us the feedback. As a recap, our objective at the end of this week is to release it to the product group and to say, hey, use this so long for your pages, give us feedback, and hopefully we'll get some drip feedback in that we can action quickly in preparation for the bigger launch. I've certainly picked up on one or two things as I've started using it for updating our team page. That'll open issues for nothing major, but it all kind of like small things that will make the experience better over time. So that's still our primary objective. Our secondary objectives is to continue with the handbook performance and architecture focus. So we'll continue to work on the monorepo restructure and hopefully wrap that up, as well as have a crack at upgrading to Frontman to see what performance improvements we can get there. And we also want to improve the handbook's UX. We want to surface things like who updated a page last and make some tweaks to the UX. And then lastly, we're going to continue to focus on some strategic support to the docs project, mostly around offline support for documentation. So Vasily is doing some research into that, but also around having a look at there's a naming change coming up soon, and we want to introduce this concept of variables in the documentation. So we'll be having a look at that as well. The second point, I'm not going to go through all the 13.3 issues in today's call. I will provide a link to our issue, and you can have a look through that. But the second thing I wanted to mention was that I'm going to take a more, I hesitate to say the word formalized because there is no process defined yet, but hopefully through the activities this week and next, to take a bit more of a formalized iteration focus on the issue for 13.3. So in the past, we used to, before a milestone starts, we did some planning and some R&D on some issues. What I want to do before that even starts now is to have a real look at them through the lens of iteration and identifying how can we break this up even further. And so I'll probably be reaching out to individuals that will get assigned to issues. We might have a sync call discussion about it if it makes sense and if our timings overlap. Or we just do an async discussion in the issue. But I want to start introducing a lot more focus on iteration. I guess not that we haven't had an iteration focus, but a more purposeful and deliberate focus. And hopefully out of that can come some recommendation on process that we can adopt going forward. And the last thing on the general that I wanted to highlight is just for you to all to be aware that there's new throughput labels that have been introduced. So the backstage label has now been deprecated and we should stop using it. There's 2 feature-related scope labels that's been introduced. If you have a look at the link in the agenda, you'll see there's feature addition, which is when you work towards the creation of a new feature. So this is very much kind of like iteration. And then there's feature maintenance. So that could be working of technical debt, tests and adding tests, backfilling tests and so on. It is not about fixing the bug. Bugs have their own specific label. And then the other new scope labels that have been introduced is around tooling. So MLs related to pipelines configuration will have tooling pipelines, and MLs related to improvements of the engineering workflow and the release tooling will have workflow, the tooling workflow label applied. So please take note of those. I'll be updating our team dashboard to work with the new labels. And where I see backstage applied, I will do my best to make a call on which the right label to apply. But I might ping you just to get your things. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Have we updated the MR templates to use not use backstage anymore?
Which templates are you referring to?
The static site editor MR template, it automatically assigns the backstage label.
Really?
No, I don't. We have it.
Okay, that's a good call out. I will have a look at that. Okay, moving on to the static site editor in the GitLab product. So, Enrique, can you give us an update on the integration, please?
Sure. So the highlight of last week is that we fixed the text escaping issues that we talked about on last week's call. We submitted our first contribution to the handbook through the static site editor. So that's very cool. Thank you, Eric, for that. We are learning along the way. We found out that we need to adapt the static site editor to be more consistent with the formatting guidelines of the handbook markdown guide. So that will be our focus this week. Derek and I will work on adapting the editor to follow those guidelines, but at the same time thinking or trying to keep the doors open to make the editor more configurable, to adopt preferences from other users in relation to markdown formatting. So that will be our focus.
All right. The next one I'll cover for Jacques is the image upload handover. So in my one-on-one with him today, the only part of the image upload stuff that he hasn't been able to complete is the 3rd iteration of that feature, which is about previewing the image in the editor. And I asked him to just do kind of like a handover recording, which he's done and is uploaded to our YouTube channel. I've put a link in there. Derek, I've provisionally got you working on that in 13.3. but Jacques has said he can make himself available if there's any need to discuss that further. But hopefully, it should be straightforward enough to just take on. All right, Chad, do you want to give us an update on the handbook around monorepo refactoring, and as well as an update on the frontman initial thoughts you have exploring that?
Sure. So as we discussed on the monorepo, there's just a lot of the rest of the site besides the handbook, which is coupled to the blog and release blog part of Middleman. And the way it works, since it actually needs the files and the extension and everything there, you can't really separate those. So the plan is that we're going to just not try to only move the blog and releases down to their own site, but basically move everything that is left besides the handbook into its own monorepo site. And then that will be done. It'll be separate from the handbook, which is the one clear area of separation that we own. And then they can decide to split it up or not, or switch to different tools however they want. And I also plan on prioritizing like splitting out the deployment. So ideally, maybe they just have their own bucket that they deploy to and will have no impact on the handbook, and then also try to continue down the road of separation and isolation, pull more stuff into the handbook so we can do the styling and all of the other plans that we have without being impacted with the directions they're going, which are definitely different than ours.
Yeah, just also for transparency, the marketing team is evaluating potentially switching away from a static site generator to a CMS. They might still use a static site generator and go with like a headless CMS or so on, but they do have some considerations and things that we in our static site editor product we won't potentially even focus on as part of our product features, or just won't get to in quite a long time. So they've got some specific needs that they want addressed immediately. So there's an evaluation going on in terms of what they want to do going forward, and as such, the separation of the handbook and the marketing side is becoming ever more important for us to make sure that we can have that separation, and also as Eric mentioned last week, we're one checkbox away from formally adopting as being the DRI for the user experience of the handbook as well in static site editor group, and so it'll just allow us to move forward on our trajectory better and without hindrance, as Chad mentioned.
Right. So the main goal is really to just get separate pipelines and deploys, and whatever the fastest way we can get there is, which is probably just moving all of the rest of the stuff at once, as long as that's okay with everybody. And on Frontman, so I thought they had forked Middleman and just sort of changed its strategy to be more performant based on what they had said in the presentation, the conference presentation they gave. But it's a really lightweight re-implementation of what Middleman does, but basically from the ground up. And so that means it's a very little bit of code. So it was easy to understand, and if we want to hack on it, it seems like it should be able to. But it also means that out of the box, it doesn't support extensions and the plugin architecture like Middleman did. So definitely it's not going to support blogs and releases easily, I don't think. As far as the monorepo structure and the extension we have for that, I poked around at it a little bit and hacked on it in a sample project, and that I think will be easier to do. It's mainly just a few places in their configuration, we need to make it be able to handle relative paths and multiple paths to build the site for the partials and the layouts and stuff like that. So that seems much more doable, which means that what I'm expecting is we need to, as we said, focus on the monorepo, getting things split out, getting a handbook with its own independent build and deploy. And then we could probably switch it to middle to front man and get a lot faster builds and a more lightweight approach. And as far as the blog and release, like if they go to an ORM or no ORM, what's the other acronym? OCD, PSA. They can do whatever they want with it as well.
All right. Thanks for that update, Chad. Yeah, I'm quite keen to see what performance upgrades we can get through using Frontman, but priority is to get that monorepo separation in place, and then we can start playing with Frontman. All right, onto the GitLab doc stuff. So I kind of like alluded to it in the intro and the general, but our strategic involvement with docs will focus mainly around Vasily doing research on the offline doc support. So currently, if you in GitLab, the product and you go /help, you know the docs for GitLab, the product gets rendered there. However, there's some technical differences between how that gets rendered and the docs.gitlab.com project gets rendered, and there's a need to provide the documentation and a better experience for the documentation in offline environments, so air-gapped environments. And so there's two considerations. We either need to kind of like improve the experience of the help functionality, and you know, how can we bring that aligned with the look and feel of the doc site, and how can we keep it dry so that we don't have things all over the place? Or the alternative is we need to actually package the docs project as part of the Omnibus installer, which is a viable route, but it brings with it a lot of other considerations as well. So the city will be doing some initial research just in terms of you know, technical feasibility and potential issues we might run into. And then as I mentioned, we're looking to kind of like start with some variable, also just doing research initially around a variable strategy for the docs, so that it's easier to change key terminologies that might change, like, you know, if they change static site editor to something else, you know, we could easily change that with one change from a variable, rather than having to go and update multiple files. Just a note, so you'll recall Jacques was kind of the acting EM for the docs project, so I'll be taking over those responsibilities again while he's on paternity leave. So I'll be primarily interfacing with the technical writing team to make sure that their items of strategic importance are surfaced to the team and factored into our planning as well. All right, and with that, I'll hand over to Eric.
Thank you. I just had a couple things. This is a little long-winded for an agenda item, but as 13.2 is wrapping up and we're starting 13.3 with a little bit lower engineering capacity, I did want to call out that 13.3 will also be the end of the quarter. I might get a little anxious here and there. I might be shifting and trying to do a little bit of reprioritization on the fly, but I don't want you all to, well, I would appreciate it if you called me out on it, if it's disruptive, and don't take it as an added level of pressure to ship more than you would normally be able to ship. You should take time off when you need it. You should spend time with family. You should have dinner and meals with your family if you can. And we'll ship when we ship, as long as it's high quality. We want to iterate on our improvements. I'm not going to be upset if life gets in the way. So that's still my stance, but as we get into 13.3, check me on it if it doesn't sound like that's how I'm behaving. And that said, just to go back to what John was saying about the marketing site, I wanted to clarify a little bit about, because they're doing these issues in the open, and as they should be, and it's great to have a transparent view into their decision-making process for the marketing site, for evaluating a CMS. And actually, it's not the first time they've evaluated this. Regardless of the recommendation, we do have a meeting later this week to discuss marketing's requirements for a CMS and why they feel like they need a CMS. Obviously, it's probably clear that there are some people in the organization that would be resistant to this. Me personally, and for our team, I'm supportive of whatever they need to get their job done efficiently. Our static site editor is young. They have pretty advanced needs from a marketing site, and their capabilities might exceed what we're ready to deliver, or almost certainly will exceed what we're ready to deliver on. So I'm taking this as an opportunity to inform them where we're headed, and generally what kind of time frame we're talking about, and get valuable information about what a marketing site at this scale might need from a static site editor for our future roadmap well down the line. So as you see issues, and if you even see me contributing to issues, or you see docs being passed around where we're evaluating different options, just know that I'm not, I'm going to try and come at it from a place where I'm not being defensive about trying to like hold on to their business, like, and make them use the static site editor. And I'm also not trying to shift our direction to meet specifically their needs either, which is an important distinction as well. We're not going to have them dictate our roadmap any more than we are going to dictate their platform.
Yeah. Yeah, and just in terms of strategic projects, the two projects internally that are really important to us and our product vision is the GitLab Handbook and the GitLab Docs project. They speak directly to the personas that we want to target and that we feel will get the best traction out of our offering. And that's why we have them as categories for our group as well. We're not just, we have the handbook. Now I'm going to have full control over the handbook to help develop that, but also to see where we take that with in terms of the integration of our static site editors. So those are the two projects internally that's strategically important to us, and why we're so involved in them, to drive, because by having our editor dog food on those two projects, we'll get immense valuable feedback. The marketing site less so at this stage. I think the blog would have probably been a good one as well. There's a lot of kind of like people who do static site generated blogs, but that's not the end of the world either.
Yeah, blogging is definitely one we would want to keep in mind, but there's a lot of considerations that go into a marketing page that is supposed to represent a multi-billion-dollar company that it might not be conducive to a statically generated site in general. So as they make that decision, I think it's important we keep that in mind and help them make their decision with whatever input we can give them. Feel free to contribute to those issues if you have thoughts. And I know Lauren's been contributing on that side with some really insightful comments on the issue. So we have a friend over there that we can talk to about it if we want any more details. But
can you link that issue?
Yeah, sure. It's open in a tab. Let me find it. There we go. They're gathering requirements. I believe this is still a draft, and the requirements that are in the description are yet to be reviewed. I'm sure they will reduce scope at least a little bit because they're asking for a lot. Specifically the stuff around like page building, a visual page builder, like that's the kind of stuff that I'm not even sure there is a product out there that can give everything they need. Anyhow.
She also mentioned to me they're looking at Jumpstart as which uses Gulp as their design template, possibly. So that's just more diversions from what we're doing.
Yeah.
There too.
I am personally, as I said before, totally comfortable with them going in a direction that is preventing us from using them as a dog fooding opportunity. Honestly, if they need these things, we're just not going to be able to deliver, and I don't want to force something on them. But we'll see what how the decision lands, and I'll keep you all updated on that issue. I linked should have ongoing discussion as well.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add before we sign off? And there goes that sufficiently awkward silence. And with that, I bid you all a happy day further. Bye-bye.